What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our week 1 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. If you enjoy, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comment section. Do you agree, disagree, your thoughts, along with any other questions you guys might have? We will do our best to answer them all, but with that being said, let's get right into it. And we kick off week 1 with the Bills at the Rams. Here, this was a game where we didn't like the running backs, but when it comes to wide receivers, it's a whole different story. For the Bills, it starts with Stephon Diggs. I think he will be a top 10 wide receiver on the season. He's being drafted as a top 5 guy, so obviously huge upside. He's the guy to start every single week for the Bills. He's going to be the most consistent one. He's going to be the main weapon for Josh Allen. I know there's a lot of hype surrounding Gabe Davis. I'm willing to give him a chance this week. Now, I will admit I am not as high on Gabe Davis as the rest of the fantasy football community. A lot of people have him as their next breakout wide receiver, a potential top 12 guy. That's not the case for me. I view him as a low to mid wide receiver too. Because I do think guys like Isaiah McKenzie or Jamison Crowder could eat into that role. Now, I do have both those guys currently as sits. I think that, per the current depth chart, it's Davis, it's Stephon Diggs as the top 2 guys. McKenzie, he's been kind of inconsistent so far. Jamison Crowder, a little bit on the older side. I thought that he could, potentially do something sneaky and be a guy that Josh Allen relies on pretty quickly. I'm not saying that can't be the case, but maybe it'll be a situation after this game where we have a little bit more of a sample size, how he fits into this offense. So for now, I'd rather just go with the top 2 options for the Bills. Then for the Rams, pretty simple. Probably going to be the case all season long. Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, you start both of them with uber confidence. Cooper Kupp, a lot of people, project for him to have a similar type of season to what he did last year when he led the NFL across all receiving categories. I don't think that's going to happen. I still think he's going to be a top 5 wide receiver, but don't sleep on Allen Robinson. I have him as a borderline top 12 guy. I'm all in on Allen Robinson this season. This should be a high-scoring affair. Really like it. And then Van Jefferson I have as a sit. He's the number 3 wide receiver on this offense. He's going to be a big play guy, big play dependent, those 50-yard touchdowns. And for that reason, there's going to be consistency issues. And because of that, I would rather him sit on a week-to-week basis unless, it's just a situation where there's injury, something like that, and they're going to have to rely on him more. But for now, just going with the top 2 guys for both these sides. Then we go to the Eagles at the Lions. For the Eagles, I'll start A.J. Brown. Again, another guy that I'm not nearly as high on as the fantasy community. I have him outside of my top 20 wide receivers on the season, especially in PPR formats. But, this should be a good matchup for him. I think he'll have success. He's the wide receiver I prefer out of the Eagles. Devonta Smith I have as a sit. I just don't think Jalen Hurts can support 2 fantasy-relevant wide receivers with his current passing skill set. He's a run-first quarterback, and, one of these guys is going to have consistency issues. You've also got Dallas Goedert there, and Hurts is going to rely on his legs a lot. So I'm only willing to take a chance on A.J. Brown. Maybe if there was a week where both guys can have success, it'd be here versus the Lions, but I'd rather play it safe. For the Lions, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he had a huge, rookie season. He was a guy that we were very much so in on, paid off big time, but this year, not nearly as hyped about him. Yes, I have him as a start this week, but, let me preface that. I have him as a low-end wide receiver too, kind of a boom or bust guy, honestly. There's just way too many mouths to feed in Detroit. You've added DJ Shark, Josh Reynolds is still there. I have them as sits because, they're behind Amon-Ra St. Brown on the roster, but TJ Hawkinson is still there. DeAndre Swift is still there. I think those guys are both going to be ahead of Amon-Ra. And Jared Goff, not exactly the most pass-heavy type of quarterback, can't support that many fantasy-relevant, weapons, in my opinion. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. I'll give St. Brown a chance, but again, I would temper your expectations. And the sits, we mentioned them, Josh Reynolds, DJ Shark, they're just too far down the depth chart in the pecking order. And then Devonta Smith. If there's one guy I'm going to take a chance on, it's A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. Right now with the quarterback and Hurts, the talent, I don't think he can be fantasy relevant as much as A.J. Brown. Then 49ers at the Bears. I'll take a chance on Deebo Samuel. Obviously, he had a huge year in 2021. Let me say this, I don't think he's going to duplicate it. I think he could very well finish outside the top 10 wide receivers. I don't believe in Trey Lance as a passer, and that's going to limit the pass catching upside of every single one of these guys for the 49ers. Deebo, Kittle, Brendan Ayuk. I've got Brendan Ayuk as a sit at this point in time. I think he is going to be third in that pecking order. Deebo, Kittle, then Ayuk. I wouldn't be shocked here if the 49ers don't force Trey Lance to throw all that much. We'll see. And it could potentially turn into a lower scoring affair. That's something to keep an eye out for. But Deebo Samuel should still be a high-end wide receiver too in my eyes. For the Bears, it's really going to be only one name all season long, Darnell Mooney, and it's all about the volume. Nobody else on this wide receiver core is worth a damn for fantasy football purposes. I stand by that. Mooney, from a pure volume standpoint, could just finish as a wide receiver 2, mid-level wide receiver 2. That's kind of what I have projected for him in this game as well. Then Steelers at the Bengals. I'll start Deontay Johnson for Pittsburgh. We anticipate it to be Mitch Trubisky. I don't think we're going to see as successful a season for Deontay Johnson in 2022 as we did in 2021. I think that Big Ben, because his arm talent was fading to the extent that it was, he was just looking for those short passes, and Johnson was getting peppered with targets. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think Claypool and Pickens are going to be more involved, but again, with Trubisky, it's always been the case. He can't support more than one fantasy relevant wide receiver. I think Deontay Johnson is going to be that guy, but I think he's going to be more so in the wide receiver 2 category. For the Bengals, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Chase is the preferred guy. He's in the wide receiver 1 category. Prefer him in standard formats. Higgins is going to be a little bit more up and down, but he obviously still has that huge upside too. But he is in the wide receiver 2 category for me. I think that's how it's going to be all season long. And then sit Tyler Boyd. Just, again, too many mouths to feed. He's going to be too up and down, too inconsistent. So in this game, I'm sitting him. Then Patriots at the Dolphins. I'm only looking at the Dolphins side of things here. Tyreek and Jalen Waddle. Tua is a guy that I think can take a step forward this season. Now, I don't view Tyreek Hill as a wide receiver 1. I do want to preface that. I think both these guys are going to be wide receiver 2s. Tyreek Hill I prefer in standard formats. Jalen Waddle I prefer in PPR formats. But with both these guys being on the field, it's going to limit their upside. So I don't think either one finishes as a wide receiver 1 unless there's, a huge, Tyreek Hill, 70-yard touchdown or something like that. For the Patriots, I'm sitting their top 2 guys, Devontae Parker and Jacoby Myers. If they hadn't added Devontae Parker, I'd take a chance on Jacoby Myers, just a perennially underrated PPR guy. Gets, 6 catches or something like that for 50 yards, so he can be a wide receiver 3. If you're desperate, maybe you go for it, but I just don't believe in Mac Jones as a passer. I think Devontae Parker is going to take away from that. So basically, if you're desperate, as crazy as it might sound, I'd go Myers ahead of Devontae Parker just because I think that relationship with him and Mac Jones does count for something, but ideally, I'd be sitting both these guys. I just don't think it's going to be a pass-heavy offense. We saw it last season, and I think it's going to be more of the same in 2022 for the Patriots. Afterwards, Browns at the Panthers. Only one wide receiver I want to start here. That's DJ Moore. I'm excited to see what Baker Mayfield is going to do versus the Browns. But, I think it's going to be Christian McCaffrey, then it's going to be DJ Moore, and then it's going to be a crapshoot for the Panthers at wide receiver. Robbie Anderson is probably the next guy up, but, he's been unhappy or that's what the rumors have been during the offseason. You still got guys like Terrace Marshall, Shi Smith. So I think it's going to be up and down season for the wide receivers after DJ Moore. I view Moore as a high-end wide receiver too. And then on the Brown side of it, I'm sitting all their guys. I mean, without Deshaun Watson, I don't know how you can confidently start any one of these wide receivers for the first 11 weeks of the season. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and David Bell. To me, without Watson, basically with a backup quarterback, I can't trust them. Obviously, Amari Cooper has the highest upside, but it's going to be an up and down type of thing. Way too boomer bust. So again, Browns are going to be a run-first team. On top of that, I'm sitting all the Browns wide receivers. Afterwards, Colts at the Texans. I'll start the top names for each one of these teams, Michael Pittman and Brennan Cooks. A lot of people are really in on Pittman this season, having him as a breakout guy, potentially a top 12 guy. I am excited about him. We'll see to what extent he can meet those expectations, but I do think he can take a step forward with Matt Ryan, and he's got a good matchup here versus the Texans. I think he can be a borderline wide receiver 1 on the week. For the Texans, Brennan Cooks, again, I think he's going to have, similar to last season, some really legitimate games and then some kind of games where he goes cold up and down, but not his fault. Davis Mills, I don't believe in the quarterback, and for that reason, I can't suggest starting any of the other Texans wide receivers on a week-to-week basis. That's primarily a Nico Collins note. And then for the Colts, Paris Campbell, Alec Pierce, even though I like the upside for Pierce down the line, in this specific game, I think it's going to be a lot of the rushing attack, and then Michael Pittman, I think Campbell and Alec Pierce are going to be, again, too inconsistent, so I'm fading both of them in this game. Afterwards, Saints at the Falcons. I'm only looking at the Saints side of it. Michael Thomas, Chris Olave. I think that Michael Thomas, as long as he plays, he can be a sneaky good value in the wide receiver 2 category. And if we see him being utilized like he was before, he can be a low-end wide receiver 1. And Olave is one of our favorite rookie wide receivers. I think he's going to be number 2 wide receiver for the Saints, not Jarvis Landry, who I currently have as a sit. And then for the Falcons, I think there's really only one wide receiver here worth starting on a week-to-week basis. I think that's Drake London, obviously, a first-round selection. But, he's kind of been a little bit nicked up heading into this week. You got Marcus Mariota. That's not Matt Ryan. That's a quarterback downgrade. And the Saints defense is very much so legit. I don't believe in the Falcons offensively. I don't believe in the offensive line. I don't believe in the quarterback talent. I think that Drake London is going to struggle, and for that reason, I have him as a sit. Then Ravens at the Jets. I'll start Rashad Bateman for the Ravens. He's pretty much going to be the most reliable name for them all season long. Not even really going to get into the other guys unless there's injuries. I think he can be a high-end wide receiver too, unless, the Ravens just decide to run it down the throats of the Jets due to game script. But Bateman should be a reliable wide receiver to potential breakout this year. For the Jets, Elijah Moore, he's the guy that I trust the most. I think he's a low-end wide receiver too. He should get opportunities, whether it's Zach Wilson, whether it's Joe Flacco. He's the number 1 guy for the Jets. For the sits, though, Corey Davis, Garrett Wilson. Again, similar to what I've said about some other bad offensive teams, I don't think they have the capability to sustain more than one fantasy-relevant wide receiver. That stands for Corey Davis and for Garrett Wilson especially. Then Jaguars at the Commanders. I'm only interested in starting one guy here. That's Terry McLaurin with Carson Wentz. That's a quarterback upgrade. I think he can be a high-end wide receiver too here. But I don't believe enough in the rest of these wide receivers. Rookie and Dotson, Curtis Samuel, he got overpaid, hasn't lived up to it. And then for the Jaguars, I just don't think they did enough this offseason at the wide receiver position. They just added a bunch of guys like Christian Kirk, the biggest name. He got a huge deal, but he's been way too inconsistent. Couldn't, have reliable games with Kyler Murray. I don't think that's going to all of a sudden change with Trevor Lawrence. I don't have all that much belief in Marvin Jones. I think it's going to be too up and down for this wide receiver core for the Jaguars, so I'm sitting all of them here. Then we go to the Packers at the Vikings. It's a little bit of a tough one here for the Packers side of it. Allen Lazard, questionable for week 1. Very good chance he doesn't play. I have him as a start, but that's only if he suits up. That's why you see the asterisk next to his name. If he doesn't, then I think Randall Cobb, as crazy as that sounds, could be the guy to take a chance on for the Packers. In this week 1, if Lazard doesn't play, I know a lot of people are probably going to get cute with Sammy Watkins, with Christian Watson, with Romeo Doubs. But, okay, for Watkins, it's the argument you're making, it's the week 1 Watkins effect. I don't want to bank my fantasy game on that, my fantasy performance. So I'm looking at more than just that. Watson, he's been hurt during the, team campaign so far. And Dubs is a guy that has stepped up, but I think now with some more guys healthy, he's going to be too far down the pecking order. But basically, if Allen Lazard doesn't play, I'm more than likely just staying away from the wide receiver core for the Packers. For the Vikings, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Jefferson, obviously a top 5 wide receiver. Thielen, I think this is a game where, he can get a lot of opportunities. It's going to be a high-scoring affair. So I'd have him as a low-end wide receiver too. Going to be touchdown dependent. Then Giants at the Titans. I really hate this game for wide receiver purposes. If there's one name to take a chance on, it'd be Kadarius Toney. The other guy's Kenny Golladay. He's been a huge bust for the Giants. Sterling Shepard coming off an Achilles, and then rookies. So Toney's the guy that I would go with, but I don't have confidence in him. I think he's a low-end wide receiver 2, even in the wide receiver 3 category. And then for the Titans, even less so. They're a run-first team. Robert Woods, I think he's going to end up being the wide receiver 1 for the team, but he's coming off an ACL. Treylon Burks, a hugely touted rookie. He's had his fair share of struggles. I think he's a guy that's going to emerge towards the end of the season, but for now, I'm going to be fading him until we kind of see how these guys are utilized. I think it's going to be very interesting, this week 1 performance. It's going to tell us a lot about these pass catchers for the Titans. Then Raiders at the Chargers. I'll start the top 2 guys here for both sides. Should be a high-scoring affair. Davante Adams, Hunter Renfrow. Really like Davante Adams with Derek Carr. I think he's a top 10 wide receiver. Renfrow, while he won't do what he did last season and be, a wide receiver 1 basically, I think he can, especially in this game, have success. I think he's going to get a lot of volume. A lot of that is based on the fact that I'm very high on Derek Carr this season, but he's going to belong for the most part in the wide receiver 2 category all season long, kind of ceding way to Davante Adams. For the Chargers, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, those are the top 2 guys. I have them as probably high-end wide receiver 2s, both of them. Again, I think Keenan Allen is your PPR guy, Mike Williams more so standard suited. Then Chiefs at the Cardinals. I really like Juju Smith-Schuster. I'm starting him across all leagues in all formats. I think he can be one of the bigger breakouts this season. So I have him as a high-end wide receiver 2. For the Cardinals, it's Marquise Brown. He's the guy that I'm most excited about, especially while DeAndre Hopkins is suspended. Then if there's one guy I got to take a chance on, it'd probably be Rondale Moore, just because I don't believe in A.J. Green, especially with him getting up there in age. I think Moore is going to be utilized, a little bit more so in interesting ways. And then for the other guys, for the Chiefs, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Mecole Hardman, I basically see both of them as the same guy, big play dependent, boomer bust, but neither one of them have really done anything special so far in their careers. I don't think it's going to change all of a sudden for Mecole without Tyreek there or MVS going from Rodgers to Patrick Mahomes. I'm sitting both of them. Then Bucks at the Cowboys. I'll start Mike Evans, and if he plays, I'll start Chris Godwin. These are going to be the top 2 weapons for the Bucks if they're both healthy and available. If they're both healthy, Mike Evans, though, to me, is not a wide receiver 1. He is a high-end wide receiver 2 in standard formats. And Godwin, honestly, the preferred guy I'd rather go with in PPR formats. Crazy to me that, he could be ready here coming off an ACL, but hey, kudos to him. For the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb, a lot of people have as a top 10 wide receiver this year. We'll see. I think this is going to be a tough matchup, but he should get a lot of volume. And then Jalen Tolbert, with Michael Gallup not expected to play in week 1, he's going to be the next guy up. I think he can be a sneaky high-end wide receiver 3 or even wide receiver 2 on the week, especially if the Cowboys struggle to run the football versus the Bucks. They're going to look to pass a lot. Lamb, Tolbert are going to be big beneficiaries. And then for the Bucks, basically when Evans and Godwins are both on the field, I don't believe in Russell Gage and Julio Jones. I think they're way too down the pecking order, going to be way too inconsistent. So I'm passing on both of them. Then finally, Broncos at the Seahawks. I'm only starting the Broncos guys here, Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. Basically, the new version of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett with Russell Wilson now in Denver. I think both can be high-end wide receiver 2s on the week. And for Seattle, without Russell Wilson and with Geno Smith at quarterback, I'm sitting both these guys pretty much, honestly, maybe all season long. If there's one guy that I'm going to be taking a chance on, it's Metcalf. I think he fits Geno Smith's skill set better, but I hate this matchup. I hate the quarterback. I hate the expectations for Metcalf and for Lockett. I think they're going to be boomer bust all season long. But with that, we wrap up our week 1 fantasy football wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at alldaypigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comments section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other thoughts you guys might have, any other questions? We will do our best to answer them all. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.